It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod, an emergency edition. We say that tongue in cheek because nothing's really an emergency when it's about sport and big money contracts. But a story broke in a report this weekend with the great Hendrik Cronje, who's never wrong. And when he is wrong, it's because someone else was wrong. It wasn't his fault. He does really thorough, consistent, careful reporting. And my partner in crime, Mvia, is one of those people that he was talking to. So we've known about the story for ages. We've known about the brewing of the story. We've heard about the threads that have constituted the story even before the story took shape. Mvia, how's it going? And I'm gonna do a little bit of inquisition with you today.
Yeah, today's my turn to answer the questions rather than ask them. And I'm a bit nervous. I mean, you're a professional interrogator, so if I crack under the pressure, forgive me.
Now, a lot of you guys have said, we're not going to believe it until MVS says it, because MVS, you've got your ear to the ground of Loftus. So first of all, you live so close to Loftus that literally people might just be walking by your house and you would overhear them. But you have made it a point to understand the angles, the differences, the people, and you're not just like a head coach guy. You are talking to the people who does the equipment, the groundskeeper, the minor player. So, we can trust you. And I think that's what the audience is saying. We know that Hendrik is a straight shooter. We know that he doesn't come in half-cocked. What are the basics of the story as reported so far by Hendrik and others for those who have not seen the article? So we're talking now about the Bulls and a potential shakeup in the head coaching position, Jake White. What is the actual framework that we know so far that's been reported?
It comes down to there's some sort of a breach in the relationship between the players, senior players, or some of the assistant coaches, it looks like. And that's what Hendrik's story was about. The notable thing is, and I noticed someone saying it on X somewhere, is when an Afrikaans team, predominantly Afrikaans-speaking team like this, starts to rebel, you must know there's something there. And the names that are being mentioned was Marcel Coetzee and Rowan Orkia, the two sort of captains of the team. We reached out to Marcel through various people that we know, and sort of lips are sealed at the moment, nothing happening. Long and the short of it is there's a lot of discontent with the way Jake was apparently doing things. And I want to put it very clear here that I'm a great admirer of Jake. Jake has made sure to make me feel welcome at the Bulls. And I don't like talking about this so much. This is why you and I delayed this a little bit to make sure that we get the lay of the land and not just jump on the bandwagon. But the long and the short of it, there seems to have been a breakdown in the relationship between Jake and his players and his coaches.
Yeah, we do believe in fairness. We're trying to keep things accurate, but also more than that, we believe that we have to keep our promises to our sources. So even if we were hearing things from a second later or even before things were happening, we were not coming on here and just blasting it out there. First of all, there's always the potential that there's another group of people that's the opposite view that we don't hear from. Like you say, this is a cultural issue, but I've heard from at least two sources that said that they would never speak ill outside, the dirty laundry thing. We're never going to put something up there for the public. My understanding from Ruan and Marcel is they weren't trying to make it public either. Now that could be naive, it's like a leak is going to happen no matter what. But talk to us about how it was done. Isn't it apparently that there was sort of a delegation that players sort of armed Marcel and Ruan with the authority to speak on their behalf, and they went to who and what were they saying? Is it sort of irreparable, or are they saying us or him, or is it more of a please help us?
From what I understand, it was a bit of an ultimatum. It's an us or him. If he doesn't go, we going. Players will either not renew their contracts or whatever steps it might take to have to leave. There was a joke going around this weekend about Loftus agents for players playing at Loftus being all jittery. Must be a stressful weekend. The point is, there was an ultimatum, it seems like. I'll be honest with you, the rumors that I've been picking up was not really about the players so much. It was more about transformation or lack thereof. There was apparently a lot of discontent about the fact that some of the more talented players did not get the chances that they were supposed to. Some of the recruitments like Namakaba, I'll call him by name, recruited from Western Province, where he was a sort of a star in the making, with promises to come to Loftus and not getting any chances. There was a lot of discontent there as well. From what I understand, that might have been escalated as well. I can't confirm that, and just what I heard. The fact that the players themselves now, from the mouths of the senior players, have protested. That came as a little bit of a surprise to me. Not the sense that they were discontent. I knew there was discontent, but they would go that far. So yeah, that's long and the short of it. They escalated it to the CEO level. I'm not sure where the leak came from. It surely didn't come from Edgar. We've spoken to him as well before. Like I said, I think it was a little bit maybe of naivety here, that they thought that they can handle it properly in-house. Yeah, never works like that.
Never. It never works like that ever. If anyone's run a business, you know that everyone always knows what everyone else is making. Their pay is completely transparent. You think it's confidential. It's not. And missions to the boss are always revealed by the receptionist or the guy that cleans up the office. I mean, somebody knows. I call it the old gray wolf in every organization. You find that old man, he's so happy to tell you everything. We started to feel and hear things a while back. So let's sort of explore the themes that we heard. The one is, players of color saying on 50-50s, it seems like when it's big games or it's a 50-50, Khan sits, Harold plays, loose forward constitutions. It could have been more loose forward. Keegan Johannes at the final hurdle, not getting the nod. Just on and on and on. There's this feeling that where Marco Massotti was on with us, and he was saying it's not lip service, it's an intentional thing, that we really believe in the idea of widening opportunity. There were some players that were unhappy. So that's one little ball of wax. It's like, we'll put that over there. We were talking about it during the Munster game, you and I, is that was happening then. Then we have this sort of awkward, do the assistant coaches even talk to each other? Do the assistant coaches do they have a pathway to the head man and say, Jake, you're wrong, or Jake, I want to do something different, that. And then we'll go to the players. So talk to me a little bit about those two themes, and to what extent you think that could have been, maybe they could have been changed earlier. What if Jake had listened to those? Maybe he doesn't agree with him, but if he had listened to that and maybe changed a bit.
I think therein lies the crux. He doesn't listen. I think that's to a large degree what the problem is. And not because he doesn't want to listen, but because, I think it's still, you mentioned it on Friday when we talked about this due diligence of ours. There's a bit of a generation gap. And I think I see it with more than one coach. We also know the Springboks made a specific plan to bridge that generation gap. I think that's to a large degree. Speaking to the younger players, especially, who wants to hear things in a different manner. You've spoken about it when you spoke to Marco Massotti, how you have to handle your young lawyers in your firms differently than what they used to. They want to be part of the decision, even though they're not really part of it. Make them feel like they're part of it, that kind of thing. I think that's a problem. And then secondly, the sort of an isolated thing that we've been seeing for a while. We've been joking about it. Jake sitting in the coaching room, drinking lots of water, but not talking to anybody. And we saw it even at Leinster when things were going really awry. They were not talking to each other. Now, there were lots of rumors about the assistant coaches not talking to Jake and Jake not talking to them. I've also heard, and I have to say this in the interest of fairness, that I've had many reports that it's not true, that they were actually talking to each other. There was no hassles there whatsoever. But from what I've heard, there were definitely problems between the coaching staff and Jake himself. I don't know if it's because he doesn't want to listen to any ideas or innovations and the likes. But the point is, there was a gap between what people were trying to communicate and people listening to what they were trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, 2 points I want to make clear as well. From everything I've ever known about Jake, there's no racial problem here, in the sense that he doesn't have ill will towards any group of people. When he makes decisions, selections, I'm sure he's thinking at that time that he's going the best guy for the job on this Saturday. And so I want to make that clear and take that off the table. I still think sometimes, though, it's important to sit down with people and talk through that. And I think that's something that you can see from Rassi and others that do really well. So even if maybe you don't get the call, you don't go away thinking, the guy wasn't listening to me, or I wasn't in the right schools, or I didn't have the right code words, or the secret handshake. That is what I'm talking about. And so that's where, Jake's personality comes in as well. I like talking to him. I've had a good time talking to him, but I'm sort of thick-skinned and impervious. I could see another guy going to him and feeling like, Jake knows what he knows. He's
Yeah.
tough. So if you have an assistant coach comes there and I've just been watching some tactical things and I think we can do this, we go up this side. I could see Jake saying, that's nonsense. Or why are you saying that? You have to have the strength to then say, no, I'm sure of my ideas. Look, here's my paper, here's my diagram, here's my findings. And my thing about the assistant coaches is in the other setups that are successful, you know who the second man is. So you have Rossi, you know that Jacques was his second man. You have Rossi, now you know that Felix is his second man. Andy Farrell, you absolutely know who his second guy is. Paul O'Connell was just a line-out guy, but he became a really big figure. There's pathways to go up. The teams that get stagnant, they seem to have a coach, and then all the assistant coaches are the same size. They're like Lilliputians and Gulliver. So I worry about Jake's succession planning, about his willingness to let someone else get big. I mean, Andres Becker is pretty big, but I wonder about his ability to let someone else grow, because it might be threatening if that guy gets too big. Am I onto something, or is it crazy?
No. I just think, sorry, Jake, don't kill me. I think it's all. The worst part is I have to go face him again afterwards, probably. And I don't
No, he's fine. He's fine. We've had our run-ins with Jake before as well, and he's actually a forgiving guy. And if he sees your point, he can know. He can change.
No, it's not that. I don't think there's anything to do with the fact that he wants to, doesn't want to get anybody to his level or anything like that. I think it's a simple matter of communication, of not knowing how to communicate. For example, one of the things I want to say here specifically, players don't get picked, from what I hear. But they don't get told why not getting picked and what they should do to improve to be picked next time. They just hear they're not in the team. Very little communication, apparently, very little to and fro. Not because, it doesn't rate him or anything. The fact of the matter is just there's a bit of a discarding element. You're not going to work out. I'm just going to discard you. That's what I've been picking up. Quite a few players that have been signed for the Bulls recently that have not come through. Boeta Chamberlain is a good example. Jaco van der Walt is another example. Lots of them. And Nabakaba, I suppose, is going to go the same way. I hope not. I mean, I think he's quite an exceptional player. I think the communication style, or lack thereof, is more of a problem than the personality issues, if you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, he has an interesting communication style. He'll sometimes give you a quote from someone back, or obviously at times he's been, once he was upset with me and he, gave me a little voicemail, and then in the end we actually fine. But someone who's 22, 23, 24 years old, they're still a young lad. They're a boy. They don't even know how to handle the who's mad at them, So, and also Jake would have come up in a different time, the same time you and I did, where kind of brutal. I mean, how you were taught, how you were coached. So the one thing that hasn't been talked about very much to me that I think about is, and it broke at the very final chapter, which is his statement. It almost seemed like predestination. Like we're talking about Calvinism back, the Dutch Reformed Church or something. Leinster had the players. We didn't have the players. It was almost like he's almost saying there was no point in even going to Dublin and having the final. This appears to have made some of the players, and this is something from my own sourcing, direct, that you and I haven't even talked about. That seems to have pissed them off, and it didn't land well. When you lose, I think it's important to win well and lose well. And when we talk about losing well, it's not just about accepting the loss. It's also, you don't want to hear from your coach at that moment that you were never good enough.
You never stood a chance. No, I agree with that. I think that's where he was a bit of a disillusionment, if you know where I'm going with this. I think Jake is a figure. I mean, I look up to Jake, and I'm almost the same age as he is. I'm sort of, Jake White, reverend almost to a degree.
He's one of the great great coaches.
When he talks, I listen to him, and when he says something like that, I know what I felt like when we had a little spat. Excuse me, I felt like the world was ending. I'll cut that out.
I know. I was getting messages from you in the middle of the night.
No, it was not a pleasant feeling. The moment you feel you're on the wrong side of a guy like Jake White, you know you're on the wrong side. And I think people were very scared of getting on the wrong side of him. And then to have someone like Jake that you revere and you look up to, and that you sort of, hero figure kind of a thing. He says that kind of thing. I know that went down very badly. But I think, like you said, that was just the thing that broke the camel's back, the straw that broke the camel's back, the last thing, because it was coming for a while. It wasn't something that just happened after Leinster. It's been coming for a while. He's been saying the same thing over and over again. And we've been wondering about it a little bit. And there was a bit of a flavor of the month thing to it as well. This week, I love this guy, and I'll be singing his praises. And next week, it's going to be this guy. Once again, it comes down to the fact that when you talk to somebody like that, who was so successful for such a long time, it's very difficult, even for someone like myself, my age group, for example, to go up to him and have a proper discussion and not be a little bit intimidated. And I think if you're a younger player, it's very difficult. Almost impossible.
Yeah. So two things that occur to me that are human nature. One is when you lose. So losing sucks. Losing poses 1,000 questions and winning answers 1,000 questions. So the cynics have said to me, Harry, sort of offline, Harry, isn't it just because we lost? So if we went to Dublin and we pulled off a miracle and won, none of this would be happening. And I think that's probably true. It doesn't mean that the underlying concerns are not real. It just means that it is in the wake of a loss, and losses are just painful, and not even just a loss, but that kind of loss where you're humiliated, embarrassed, where the headlines, people waking up around the world rugby watching it from Australia going, oh wow, the Bulls got hammered. That can really make people furious. And the second part is then they want a strong man to ride in on a horse and save us. This is normal, like, who can save us? It's Ackerman, it's Franco, it's whoever, Peter de Villiers. Like, just pick a number, throw a blanket over some guys and see who emerges. So speak to me about that. How much of this was already real and brewing and unlikely to be swept under the rug, and how much of this is just because there was a humiliating loss in a final?
No, I said it before. That just throw that broke the camel's back. We knew about this long before. There was lots of discontent brewing. And like I said, for me, I expected the angle to be the transformation angle. There were articles being placed in various newspapers, repeated questions being asked him at the press conferences about transformation or the lack thereof. But a press conference inevitably is very structured. You only have so much time, you only have so many questions to ask, and it gets moved on, and you never get a chance to really dig deep into things. And then I thought that was where it was going to come from. So what I'm saying is this was something that had many angles to. Transformation was one of it. The other one was the lack of communication or the breakdown relation between the coaches. The other one was sort of a problem with the players now. And then it started building up and building up and building up. And like any volcano, just sort of one day it just erupted. And I think the Leinster thing was simply the catalyst, the thing that made it happen, the thing that made it erupt. It wasn't the actual volcano. That's just the thing that made it erupt. So no, it's much more to it than much deeper than this, I suspect, than what you think.
So let's go through each relationship one at a time and sort of see what went wrong, if it actually has gone wrong, and if it's irreparable, if it can be fixed. Because when you do this kind of thing, you always have to wonder about you. No team is going to throw out 10 people to save one person, but they might throw out 3, to save one person. So we know that Andries Becker and Chris Rousseau are on the record as being people that are representing. And I hate killing the messenger, because if they were going on behalf of other assistants, we shouldn't just single them out and say, it's a Becker problem. Talk to me about Andries Becker in particular. To me, he's a very friendly guy, but a quiet guy. Okay, he's not going to speak a lot, but he's very good at his craft. He's very technically good, but he's not someone I think that necessarily people think of as a head coach. And so to the extent that was part of it, maybe that's not going to work. But, he doesn't seem like a guy who was just going to make something up. But he did seem a bit disconnected from Jake.
I can't really speak to anything particular that I can only talk to what I heard there, and that's very, very dangerous thing to say.
Yeah,
I must tread carefully. Yeah, there was a bit of discontent, and I suppose being the senior figure in the coaching staff, he was probably tasked with taking it up further. Whether there were any ambitions to, further his own career, I can't comment on that either. I've heard stories to that extent, but I can't confirm that, and I don't want to, gossip about it. Definitely, there was a breakdown that I can guarantee you, and it's clearly seen in the body language at Leinster. But I think that was a precious situation, specifically that might have exacerbated it. It was different setup. They couldn't sit apart from each other. They had to sit right next to each other because they were sitting right in the stands between the people, which is not what you see at Loftus, for example. But again, I just have to confirm it, and I don't want to, wishy-washy this, but I've heard from firsthand that in the changing room they had no problem with each other whatsoever. So that's a bit of a no-brainer, a misnomer for me. I'm not sure.
Extremely small sample size for me at Captain's Run in Limerick. Becker was out on the field before everyone else, gathering balls, setting up cones, setting up his drills. He and Jake never spoke or looked at each other the entire time I was there for an hour and a half. And at the end, Andries Becker was the final guy. He was after everyone. Everyone else was done and dusted. He was still roaming, looking at the sky. So it's interesting to me that that may have been brewing as early as then on tour. The players, Marcel Coetzee is not the same as Ruan. Marcel and Ruan are very different generations in a way, almost. Marcel's been through the wars at Sharks, at Ulster. He's had conflicts, but he's not known as a trouble starter. He's more a trouble ender. He's the guy that you bring in. Ruan is so young, so it's remarkable culture-wise for Ruan to be in this position, but he's also a captain. So it makes me think that if the two captains basically are going, that there's 15, 20 players behind them that are absolutely okay with it.
We've spoken to someone who's known Ruan since he was at school, young boy, and it's completely out of character for him to do something like this, which shows you how hard they must have been pushed, or far they had to have been pushed to do this. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
It's not like Afrikaans culture. I've always talked about jokingly about, I grew up in Pretoria in Afrikaans speaking culture. You grew up in Cape Town, English speaking culture is different. We ambushed you on the way home and, beat the living daylights out of you, or the other way around. But it's different when you're Afrikaans. You have to be differential. You have to, respect your elders. You mentioned Calvinistic. I never think that's exactly what it is. You wouldn't necessarily
the culture. Yeah.
That culture. And if you push to do this and your name gets attached to it, I can almost not imagine how deep it must go. Honestly, Harry, that side of it is huge to me. That says a lot. And
right.
That would be, to me, the biggest concern, honestly. The people who actually led this sort of revolution, that's not a revolution yet, but protest, let's call it a protest. That to me is the most important thing.
I think it's somewhere between a protest and a revolt, because it has organization, and it has a desired outcome, and it's pretty clearly stated. It's us versus it's you. You pick him or you pick us. And there's contracts involved. So Jake's contract goes through 2027. All the players will have different staggered contracts. Talk to me about the board and the execs now, which is maybe the most important. The relationship between Jake and his employers. What does an employer do at this point in time? Is it a matter of relative risk? I got this contract here, got that contract there. How much does it hurt my ability to recruit? I've got these guys coming in next year. Andre Pollard, what is he thinking? Maybe I could call Andre. Who would you like to play for? I mean, how much of this is player power? How much of this is just going to be the board and Rupert and what Sepe saying? Don't care. This is the guy. We have Jake. Learn to live with him.
This Mark Twain had a saying, I know it's not exactly historically accurate, but he said, the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. And I think we mustn't jump the gun here. Jake has got powerful friends. Jake is a fantastic coach, and I've always said that many, many times. Don't count your chickens before the eggs have hatched, or whatever the word is, whatever that. But the point is, he might still not go anywhere. He's got very powerful friends. Johan Rupert is in charge, owns the Bulls with Patrice Motsepe. Him and Jake and their wives are very, very good friends as well. I would not be surprised if Jake ends up staying. I'll be honest.
Jake is a survivor. He's a survivor and he's a fighter. And everything he's so far, he hasn't said much, but what he has said has been defiant. His WhatsApp quote from Bertrand Russell, it's sort of like, come for me, come on, let's go, bring it on. So and he's not someone who reacts to criticism initially with anything other than one emotion, which is anger. Now he has plenty of capacity and has shown over the years that he can change. The way the Bulls play right now is not the way the Brumbies played. He's evolved in that sense, but his initial reaction is always the same, which is, I'm going to come out punching. So this makes me wonder about the board's options here. They're going to have to pick an option. There's no middle ground here where you say, you know what? Let's have a kumbaya braai where everyone goes away and they come back and they're all friends. There is no possible way that Marcel and Jake and Andries Becker can go have a braai somewhere in the bush and come back and all be happy campers. It's not going to happen.
No.
Isn't it at this point basically saying, who am I saying goodbye to?
That's it. If Jake stays, many other people will leave. And if Jake leaves, many of those people will stay. It's going to be one or the other. Not going to be a mixture of the two, I don't think. So it's going to be a clean sweep anyway. A new broom, whether the new broom is below the head coach or above, or the head coach himself, that's a different story. So I don't think that's going to be resolved. It doesn't look like it. When I was given a heads up about this article before the weekend, the word that was used was untenable. That's the situation. And it's going to be decided by the board. The meeting is on the 4th of July. Willem Strauss and Edgar Hoffman that we've spoken to both on this channel, they've been very supportive of Jake in the past. I'm not sure about that relationship anymore. Apparently it's not that strong from what I can gather, but again, hearsay. But that's the point. The board can decide one thing, but the owner might decide something else. We've known that the owner made some decisions about recruitment of players, for example, that were not necessarily discussed with the coaches to a large degree. It was sort of almost imposed on them. It might be that there's a white knight in the form of an owner that might come to his rescue, but I don't think the situation is going to change. Like you said, either way, either coaches or players are going to go, or Jake's going to go. That's it.
What about the fan base? What's your reading in general on the ground in Pretoria? How are people feeling? Is it kind of cautiously in the middle? Is it got to save Jake, or Jake's got to go?
There's always been a movement about Jake's got to go, and I've always been fighting against that valiantly, or tonkiotily, if you want to call it that. Maybe tilting at windmills, because I thought always, and I still do, that he's an exceptional coach. He's got us in 4 out of 5 finals, include the Rainbow Final. Just didn't win them. The point is that we got there. Maybe not the second best team, but we still got in the finals. So I think at the moment, the biggest emotion that I picked up was shock. We were shocked to hear this. And it's because, like I said, it goes back to the people that actually led this thing.
So more shocked at the way it happened.
No,
maybe
shocked at that it happened.
Okay.
At all. And then we sort of living in this sort of la-la land that everything's going well at the Bulls, we're getting to the finals, we might necessarily win it. And then suddenly realize there's something seriously wrong there. That was a shock, number one. And then secondly, to hear how it was broken, who led this kind of protest and the likes, that was even of a bigger shock. So I think the biggest emotion at the moment, and I can test for myself and my people, the friends that I talk to, is absolute shock. We were flabbergasted about this. Now, we're all going to say, yeah, but we knew they were not happy. So we knew they were not happy about that. The point is, this was left field. We never saw this coming to the extent that it's happened. It's a big story. I spoke to Hendrik Cronje. He said to me as well, it was such a tough story for him to write. Didn't want to do it, but a story is a story. So I suppose it's very, very uncomfortable, very unpleasant, actually. We're not happy in Pretoria.
Yeah, so I think it's almost like both. It's the fact of it, and also the way it seems like an English soccer club way of going about it, as opposed to a Pretoria inside job. Hush, hush, keep it quiet, go into a room, come out, make a plan. The timing is super important in organizations, because you think it might be good to draw it out. Actually, it's not. But also you don't want to do it in one moment. So it's somewhere in between. It's like not right now, not just now, but also you cannot kick it down the road too far, because coaches get scooped up and then you might end up, you're holding your nuts in a bag. So the next thing is going to be, who comes in? If Jake is out, and we're saying that there's odds that he doesn't, we're saying that there's an odd that he stays, but let's say the majority odds right now are that it's untenable and he has to go because there's too many other people that would have to go. So how soon will we know post July 4? Who do you think is in charge of this process? Is it really just Rupert and Motsepe, or is it an Edgar situation guiding the owners?
I think it's going to be an Edgar situation guiding the owners. One thing that I did say on Twitter, and I made a point this weekend of not saying too much on Twitter. People kept asking, what does MV and Harry say? And MV and Harry kept very quiet because we want to just, kykie kat uit die boom uit,
Yes.
We want to make sure that
And
we
because
got,
because I'm very slim and Olika.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Baie. Yeah.
Slim like in clever, not slim like in thin.
Yeah, that's not true. I mean,
The point is, I said there specifically, the one comment I did make was we have to have cool heads prevail here, no knee-jerk reactions, no short-term solutions to a long-term problem here. Who's available? Johan Ackerman's available. Bring him in. I'm not saying anything about his merits as a coach or anything like that. I'm just saying don't make a quick decision in the interest of making a decision. It's Currie Cup now. Pee-wee Nomlomo is in charge of the Currie Cup. We've got 3-4 months until the preseason starts for the URC. We've got time to make a proper decision, whether Jake stays or Jake gets replaced. And if he does get replaced, he must be replaced by a properly vetted candidate as well, the one that's long-term in the interest of the best interest of the Bulls.
Yeah, I think that the question of time is actually a player here, the timing, because anything that's going to be knee-jerk is going to be terrible. You have to have continuity of style of play. You bring in a different coach that has chucked the ball around. You've recruited a certain way. You've trained a certain way. You have people 3 or 4 years into a system that is getting them to finals. Then you're just looking for that one piece. You don't want a coach that comes in and he's an overhaul coach. It's almost like you'd want a Michael Cheika, to be honest, who would come in and pretty much keep the player groups same, but know how to motivate them and talk to them better and make them all like 2% better as human beings. And then, he goes away. He's the interim. He's the caretaker, but actually he might get you to another final, might even win. And then you have the long-term guy. Or you wait and you actually carefully evaluate the candidates. This is a very interesting next chapter of this thing. I think, to be honest, I think it's irreparable. And the reason why is because there's too many relationships. I think, one of the naughtiest one is fixing his relationship with the black players. I think once that goes south, it's hard to bring it back because people don't trust each other. And it's a difficult topic upon which to discuss. And it has other third parties that get involved. I think the assistant coaches is the next one that's really difficult. Listen, coaches will fight, but when there's this level of, not belief in each other, that's tough. Players probably the easiest one because, listen, you have to bark at each other and ask each other to run into walls anyway. Surely there's a way to come around. And sometimes coaches can be really loving in their arguments and they can come clean and they can apologize. And it goes a long way, for a player to see a great man like Jake sit down and say, I'm sorry. But I think it's too many things at once. And I haven't seen that agility from Jake to say enough sorries at one time. And so I think it's all going to be on the owners. So let's talk about the potential replacements because, we have to, even though we think it's stupid. We have Ackerman, we have Franco, we have, who do we have out there that's possible? Johan van Graan has been floated. There's no way he's leaving that contract at Bath.
Before we get to that, I wanted to say something that you just mentioned there. Coaching the Bulls is not the same as coaching the Sharks or the Stormers for that matter. It's a very different situation, culturally. And I mean, I've experienced it myself. You're not going to fly in a Michael Cheika here and expecting to work. You might work for one season, like you said, like you did the Flesh.
That would never happen. Yeah.
The point is, it's not going to fit. The cultural fit is the biggest problem in Pretoria. Let's be honest. And that's what it is. And all the realities of transformation and requirements of transformation, like you said, Marco Mazzotti is committed to transformation, not because it's lip service or anything like that, because it needs to be done. And the Bulls need to get to that point. I think they are there, but they're not necessarily as committed to it as they should be. And thinking that, we're okay, we've got a couple of players on the books and that's enough. It's not enough. That's. Let me just get that out of the way. My conversations at Loftus, from what I've understood, and it might be completely wrong, and it might be completely off base here, but the candidates are Franco Smith, Johan van Graan, and Johan Ackerman. Franco Smith, I'm not sure what the situation is. We're trying to speak to him. We're trying to set up something in. We'll see what we can do, but we're not necessarily going to talk about this because it's not the right time to talk about that just now. But Johan van Graan, like you just said, is signed up till 2030. He's earning big bucks there in England. I'm not sure he
I
wants
mean,
to
he's getting
come back.
Coach of the Year awards in England.
Family's
I think
happy in England. He's not going
yeah.
to come. And also, there's a bit of a legacy problem here at Loftus, with his dad being, in charge of the Bulls for so long. And Jan Kerman is available right now. I'm not sure that he's actually the right candidate. I said earlier, I'm not going to get into the merits of it. I'm not going to, because I might have to work with him in future, because I have to be careful here. You never know. But it's going to be one of those three, and then maybe some sort of left field candidate that we're not seeing. Or it might be Jake that still stays on, in some sort of, maybe you talked to John Dobson, maybe kicked upstairs to become the full-time director of rugby, which he is already, but not head coach anymore. I don't know. What do you think of that option? Maybe he stays as director of rugby and then brings in a coach under him.
No, not for me. I think Darbo can do that, but I think, nah, I think this is going to eat inside Jake's stomach. He's going to have to win or not. And if he wins, then I actually think he might be magnanimous and it might be ability to bring it all together. But he's first going to have to win. And if he loses, I don't think he sticks around. And losers mean that these people who went behind my back and said these things about me win, get any kind of, satisfaction. That's a loss for him. And look, you want a coach that has that personality probably because he wants to win so much. But in this situation, it doesn't play so well. It's not so fun. It's not so nice.
Harry, let me tell you something. Sorry.
Yeah.
The bad taste I have in my mouth as I'm speaking to you right now, from having had a run-in with Jake and other people in the past, I can just imagine being a player, having that kind of a breakdown. It's, I can't imagine how tough it must be. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, and players move to clubs predominantly because of coaches. There's a reason why you can recruit if you've got the coach that has that kind of swag, that kind of vibe.
Jake White, and it's World Cup winner,
It's beyond the day, though. It's not just about, can he win? It's like, does he care about me? Does he think about my family? Razor Robertson talks a lot about how he built culture in the Crusaders, who the most successful club team ever. And he digs down deep. I mean, he's having the braai on the beach, surfing with these guys, understanding their sister's problem, what kind of car they like. He really digs in deep. And that's a different generation of coach. You can see how Rassie, Rassie's definitely in charge, but he definitely also can sit down with Stephen Kitsoff on a pod and they are just having a beer, having a good time. It's very easy. So I think this is a different generation. We all good until at some point someone taps us on the shoulder and says, it's time. Here's the golden watch. So, that happens.
It's so difficult. I can imagine. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
So, I mean, to me, the personal reflection is that I hope the best for Jake. I actually wish him the best because I think he's an intellectually curious guy. He loves rugby like nobody loves rugby. He's a rugby man through and through. He oozes, he sweats rugby. This is a different problem. This is relationships. And as you all know, relationships is the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. It is the one that is the least perfectible. It's like golf on steroids. You think you're good and then boom, you shank it. So here we have a shank into the woods, and it's going to be a hell of a rescue job for Jake to get out of the woods here. I think he might be in a bunker that he cannot get out of.
You talked about personal reflections. Now, if I think back to my time at the Bulls, started with Lunga, the press conference, the press officer, and then meeting Jake and slowly getting to know Jake and slowly starting to build this relationship and slowly getting his phone number after many months and then getting this bollocking that you and I got last year kind of a thing. And Lunga's leaving. Jake might be leaving. It's all change at the Bulls, and I'm upset and I'm unsettled, if that's the word. And I think to a large degree that's what many Bulls supporters are feeling at the moment. Maybe not so much shocked anymore as unsettled, not sure what's going to happen. And I want to say this very clearly, and I think you agree with me on this. Edgar Rathbone and Willemstraat are probably the right people to handle this, especially Edgar. We've met him, we saw how intelligent he is, and what a good leader is. And I honestly think, and many people have said this to me as well, the one thing they do have faith in is that this is the guy that will manage the situation properly. So best of luck to you, Edgar. I'm happy I'm not in your shoes. This is why you get paid the big bucks, I suppose. But I just hope it gets resolved and that the Bulls can. We don't have a disastrous season next year. I don't want to go back to the dark ages. Just before Jay came there, we need to stay the top team in the world, top team in South Africa for that matter, not the top team in the world. But you know where I'm going.
There's an irony, isn't it? There's an irony in that the team that is finishing second so many times, so that means 14 other teams are wishing that they were that team, and it's that team, the one that 14 other teams would trade places with, is the one having the big coaching thing. My personal reflection is that Jake has a verbal tick, and I always pay attention to how people speak and the phrases they use and what they come back to. And he always says 100%. 100%. That's one of his responses. And when I hear someone do 100%, I always think it's also 0%. It's a 0 or 100. He's an all or nothing guy, and life is more 82%. And so guys like that can find themselves in a corner because, unbeknownst to them, underneath the surface, the things that they minimize and said, "Oh, that's nothing. He'll get over that." They don't get over that. And if you have enough people that are not getting over something that you said or did or the way you are, and they start to talk to each other, then this is what you have. And so we are where we are. This is actually very common in sports. What's uncommon is that it happens when you've had very successful seasons back to back to back to back. That's unusual.
I'm telling you, this is a tragedy. I'm sorry, but this is a tragedy. It's the worst thing that could possibly have happened to the Bulls, honestly. I think so. And it's a tragedy that it happened, and it's a tragedy what caused it to happen, if you know what I'm saying. It could have been resolved with a bit of man management and a bit of reflection and the likes. It's the worst thing that could possibly have happened. I don't want to sound like a prophet of doom, but honestly, it's not good. I hate it.
It could go the other way. It could be the start of something amazing, and we'll look back a year from now and say, "Oh, it had to happen." The problem with that theory is that there's not a ready replacement in the wing. So normally when you come in with a rescue job, there is someone that you have in mind. So this is the difficult one of, it could just sit there for a while. There are other coaching jobs open. The Welsh job is still open. There are teams that are good to go to, and also a lot of the teams have been hired, like Munster jobs filled now. So you get into the situation of, what if you're just stuck with a few people that the only reason why you're talking about them is because they want the job? Well, that's not really what you want in life. So,
and that's the only ones that are available. So, you're stuck. That's what I said. Now we have to be careful here, not just take the first guy that comes along on his white horse and see him as a rescuer.
It's like you're at the Friday night disco back in the day, and the first girl, second girl, third girl, wait. And then now you're at the end of the night, like, oh, there's just that one left now. So you don't want to wait too long either. No, so here we are. Stay tuned on the Lekker Rugby Pod.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.